Hi, Jane here. I'm going to upload 4 consecutive videos that are from podcasts of Dave Duncan from 2005 and 2006 because he had a tremendous amount of insight of what in the world is going on in the world. He had 2 websites, the 2012 scam. And he called that in 2006. And he also had another website, the New World Order scam, and that is available still on the internet. So I'll provide all the links. I did the best I could with this sound, but if it's not clear enough, I've provided links to the podcasts, and these were done by P.I.D. Radio, Sharon and Derek Gilbert. The P.I.D. stands for Peering into Darkness. Um, the reason I wanted to do it, yes, this material is dated during the Bush era, but this gentleman has a great deal of insight. He was a hippie from in San Francisco during the heyday, 66, 67, the summer of love. He followed a guru. Uh, and he renounced all that in the early 80s. So I am not promoting, you know, drug usage or the occult or any of that, but I found this man to have a great deal of insight. How do I know that? I corresponded with him from late 2005 to maybe the early part of 2009. I'm not sure exactly, but he had terminal illness. Never breathed a word to me about that, but he said his goodbyes, and he did pass away in 2009. Um, I know, from corresponding with him, I had a great deal of respect. I was on a tremendous learning curve. He knew the Bible, and we very much challenged each other in interpretations, that type thing, Old and New Testament prophecy, you name it. So, this is the type of thing I don't want to go down the memory hole. And as I said, it's during the Bush era, but many of his insights about humanity being double crossed, and there's just so much switch and bait going on, just apply it to what's going on today. Okay, have a great day. I'd like to look at Romans 11 very quickly. For the reason that replacement theology has really crept into the church, that the church replaces the Hebrew people. It seems to go by another name, spiritual kingdom, and I really don't even understand what they're talking about, where they're getting it from the Bible. Um, the first part talks about how the good Lord has always, always, always preserved a remnant of Hebrew people. The middle section describes how the Gentiles were grafted in to to God and salvation through Jesus Christ. This happened. And at the end, I'll just read very briefly. For I would not, brethren, that ye should be ignorant of the mystery, lest you should be wise in your own conceit, that blindness in part, is happened to Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles come in. This is God's plan. And the Bible goes on to say, for this is my covenant unto them, that I shall take away sins. And to support this in the book of Revelation, this is during the end times. The 144,000 sealed by God are named out by the tribes of Israel. Um, and this is very different than the governments of the world, shall we say. the Sanhedrin, the Talmudic people. And it mentions twice in Revelation. This is uh, the first three chapters of Revelation are speaking to the church to instruct them. And in Revelation 3, for the first time, it mentions the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews and are not. This is something different than the 144,000. That is crystal clear. And in Revelation 2:9, it talks about the blasphemy of them that say they are Jews and are not, but are of the synagogue of Satan. And in further support in Revelation 21, this is in the millennial kingdom of God, and it talks about the great city of the Lord, and it has 12 gates with 12 angels, and the 12 names of the tribes of Israel their names are written on it. This time frame is during the millennial reign of Lord Jesus Christ.
That interview, part 1, with David Duncan.
One of the most interesting websites you'll find on the internet is the newworldorderscam.com, and its owner, operator, proprietor, and author is Dave Duncan. Dave, welcome back to P.I.D. Radio.
Well, thank you, Derek.
You know, Dave, we're so glad to have you back. Derek, we're glad to have you back. Dave, you know, we've been praying for you. We know you had a few health issues, and we're just glad that you're doing okay and that you're up to doing the interview with us. But more than that, after your last interview, we had lots and lots of email, people who really appreciated your point of view, but more than that you're coming from a very unique perspective.
Yeah,
you hung out with some interesting people.
Different background.
Exactly. We've got listeners to our show now that have never heard you, though. And rather than go through the entire story that you told us when you were on last year, because they can listen to you in the archives, can you just really briefly give us a little bit of your background that gives you a unique perspective on biblical prophecy?
Yeah, sure. Well, I was a hippie back in 1966 and 67, and I lived in Haight-Ashbury for a couple of years, and we all lived in a commune, and we had a guru that was the leader of that commune by the name of Alan Noonan, and that man, I think, knows more about the plan, the occult plan for the end of the age than any individual that I've ever met. And so my first website was primarily geared to expositing what I learned from him. And I think there are some things that I learned from him that I have not seen published. And there's been so much published about this that in itself is interesting, that some of his things have escaped to being published. And so I went ahead and published all of the memories that I have about his concepts of how the plan will be realized. And that was my first website.
Now, would you have considered yourself a spiritual man when you were a hippie?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I think at that point in time, I was convinced in my heart that comprehension of spiritual realities would be facilitated by taking LSD. So I took huge amounts of it. Of course, I've changed my opinions about that since that point in time, but I think a lot of us had a strong spiritual impulse to comprehend what this is all about.
So it was opening the doors, like as Aldous Huxley put it.
Yes, right.
Doors of perception, yeah. So your first website, again, newworldorderscam.com, and you've got a new page now, or a postscript, if you will, the year 2012 scam.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, you know, we all try to assemble our ideas about what reality consists of from our experiences in life and what we read and what we see. And I'd like to share some of my life experiences, two of them in particular, that have strongly shaped my views about reality.
Okay.
I know that I've studied conspiracy literature for, 25 years, and I've seen quite a bit of it. I've read quite a few books that strongly tell us that the conspiracy is a Jewish one, and I've really come to take issue with that.
Dave, before you get too far into this, I want to just make a point of what you do for divided.
No, well, I try not to be, but you know, that's one of the problems in this whole field of endeavor to try to understand what's going on. There's so much information out there. It is hard to sift and sort what's worth keeping from what's not.
It is. I just want to make that point so people who are not familiar with you know that you don't just read anything and everything and swallow it whole cloth. You really do test things out.
Well, I think one of the tests of the conspiracy literature was determined for me by the fact that I knew some years back some people in the billionaire class, and I'm not using the word billionaire loosely, they really truly were. They have a family history that is intimately tied back to Bohemian Grove, and these connections for that family go back to the latter half of the 19th century. And we traveled frequently to New York and Washington, D.C. and Houston, and we dined in the finest of restaurants, and from our conversations over the span of 15 years, while I was employed with them, I learned to know them quite intimately as people. These people up there in the stratosphere have a burning hatred of the Jewish people. There just simply isn't any other way to describe it. In 1982, I made it known that I had become a Christian. And during the next few years, I gently suggested that maybe they should have a heart for the Jewish people. So my employment wound up kind of soon after that. But the lesson learned was that the level of Jew hatred was just at a fever pitch, or a spiritual or satanic level among these people. So this shaped my conclusions about billionaire families in the Bohemian Grove. These folks were definitely Gentiles. And I should also mention that there were a lot of Vatican connections, too, that were there in their comfort zone.
Dave, may I ask you a quick question? These people that you were hanging out with when you were employed there, the billionaire types, did they speak openly of Bohemian Grove? Is that why you know that they were part of it?
Oh, yeah. In fact, they published a book that was a family history that openly discussed the membership in Bohemian Grove.
Oh,
Interesting. Huh.
we'll have to have a chat just about that sometime.
Yeah, that's a whole that's a rabbit hole that goes down pretty
It
deep.
is.
Yes, it is. So, you know, I've had to try to reconcile this knowledge that I've gained from experience knowing these people with the idea that is so often presented that the Jews are the conspiracy, and it just doesn't jive. It just doesn't square with reality, at least as far as I've been able to see. And on the front page of my 2012 scam website, I mentioned Greg Szymanski's interview with a person named Joanna, and she struck me as having a level of sincerity that made her pretty hard to dismiss. And I'd like to repeat some quotations from her that were published at rents.com.
Okay.
Specifically, Anna said her role within the religious sector of the Illuminati had to do with an extremely devious Illuminati ploy, creating a false Christianity leading to mass genocide. Again, quote, my huge area of concern is an extremely deceptive ploy by both Illuminati and the core Vatican cult members to unite all people under a false Christianity that will give reason for genocide. Again, quote, I call the New World Order the Fourth Reich, where anti-Semitic thinking becomes acceptable under the guise of saving people in the Middle East. People will also look at all the Jewish power leaders that conspiracies point to, not realizing not only are they not practicing Jews, but they are not the puppet masters. Again, quote, the protocols of Zion are also blamed on the Jews, but in actuality it is this Vatican core, which includes the Jesuits. And again, many think tanks where Illuminati members planned how religion in the New Age movement could be used to create one religion under false Christianity. There are also many evangelists that are Illuminati as well as New Age leaders. Now, I think that these statements are a warning for us, and we should listen up, because this certainly appears to be what is going on as much as I can see. And then there's another one of my life experiences that strongly shapes my perception of reality that I'd like to share with the P.I.D. audience. I'd like to describe a trip of mine to Israel in 1994. And I got to tour all over Israel, and it was just wonderful. I did a lot of tent camping, and I was able to visit a little town in the mountains of Galilee called Safed. And it's also known as Ziphat. Safed, and this town is located a little northwest of Lake Galilee up in the mountains. It is famous for its history as a center of Kabbalism in Israel, extending back to medieval times and even before. And Isaac Lurie comes to mind as a medieval Kabbalist who was famed for the town of Safed. And while I was there, I happened to stop in the Lubavitcher Center, the Chabad Lubavitcher Center, and I saw posted on the bulletin board there the dust jacket of Rabbi Michael Drazen's book, Their Hollow Inheritance, and I give a link to that book at my website. I learned that he was living there in the town of Safed, and he is a native Californian, and I expressed interest in his book. And at first, I didn't know what the book was about, and I mistook it as one of the kind of books that exposes paganity and Christianity. But boy, I was sure wrong. The book goes into all what I thought it was. I went and had purchased a copy after I talked with him, met with him, and it turned out to be they are pretty unhappy with the Christian proselytizing. Boy, they are anxious to no longer be touched by proselytizing.
They meaning the Lubavitchers, the Kabbalists?
Oh, yeah, they are very resentful of Christians trying to present Christianity to them. Very resentful. Anyway, after I learned that after the Lubavitcher people saw that I was interested in Michael's book, one of the people there called him on the phone and said, "Hey, you want to come over and talk to this guy?" And so I got to talking with him about a whole range of topics, and the Lubavitchers are Kabbalists. And since this includes the concept of reincarnation, one of the first questions that I asked him is, how could this Eastern Indian Hindu belief be consistent with Torah, the Bible? The first 5 books, and I don't remember all that he said, but he pointed out that Abraham had sons by his wife after Sarah died, and that these sons of Abraham migrated to India and became the Indian people and took with them a belief system from that Abrahamic era of time that included the concept of reincarnation. Of course, we wouldn't agree with that, but that's their take on the thing. Michael's book is very strong on the concept that King Messiah will soon come to Israel, and indeed they are just pining away for this with all their hearts. And much of his book relates to the time period in the future when, in Israel, King Messiah will finally reign. And I mentioned to him that my ancestry goes back on my mother's side to an Itzhak and Sarah Doherty, who had been Irish Jews in the 1800s. And since Jewishness is reckoned according to matrilineal ancestry, I believe myself to be at least in part a Jew, although obviously I've been brought up as a Gentile, and I was telling him this. And his reaction to this was very strong. He became very insistent on my behalf, even agitated, and insisted that I see the wisdom of proving my Jewishness by establishing for certain my ancestry. And he told me that if I wished to survive well in the time of King Messiah's reign, it would be very good for me, that I would get along in life a lot easier if I were established as a pedigreed Jew. In other words, this was very clear from what he was saying. If I were a proven Jew, that I would survive the politics of this coming era of time quite a bit more easily.
In other words, the implication being that those who are not Jews would not survive well in the reign of King Messiah.
Absolutely. So thinking back on this, I continue to be just amazed at his fervor of his insistence about this topic, and he also, his book also describes what life would be like under the Noahide laws, which for the Lubavitcher Hasidic Jews, they strongly promote this as law for the world. I think most of us in our community recall that George Bush Sr. was responsible in his term for putting the Noahide laws into law here in the United States. And this is a good topic for people to do internet research on. And further, he insisted that I go to, down at Temple Mount, the Western Wall, the Wailing Wall. At the north end of this, there are 3 cave-like structures, and he wanted me to go see a rabbi there, and he insisted that I would go there and have a phylactery tied to my forehead, that I would undergo the oath of a Jew. So I thought that was an interesting thing that he should be concerned about. about this whole topic. Now, I should add that Michael was trying to be a friend of mine, and I should not cast him as a villain, and I don't want to. He and most all of the Jews just simply don't realize that Jesus Christ is who he says he is. And so
Exactly.
I don't want to be too hard on these people.
Well, did they leave you to believe that King Messiah is alive now?
Yes, he did, and I think that was a little less hazy at that point in time. And just this past year, King Messiah by the Kabbalists in Israel has now been declared by a number of high-ranking Kabbalists to be present and alive in the Holy Land.
That's very, very strange because when after you sent us this note last night saying that you wanted to mention this as well today, Derek and I did some research on the Lubovichers, and the word Lubavitch comes from a small town in Belarus, which was where a lot of these Russian Orthodox Jews came from, and a lot of them settled around New York, and they have branches throughout the world, and they had various leaders, rabbis throughout the years, and the one named Menachem Mendel Schneerson died in 1994, but shortly before his death, he was proclaimed to be King Messiah.
Yes, he was.
Are they saying he has resurrected?
Well, I wondered about that too, or I wonder if they have a new candidate. I don't know, but I know about a year ago there was a lot of talk coming out of the Kabbalists in Israel that King Messiah was now known to be in the land, and then just 3-4 months ago again, a very old man, a Kabbalist, he's since died, and I think he was something like 103, and he was saying that he had met King Messiah and talked with him, and that the time of his unveiling to the world was very soon in the future. And so they're talking about something.
That is so chilling. Well, again, with the Chabad Lubavitch, which C-H-A-B-A-D, is Chabad, and it's apparently 3 Jewish letters that form an acronym that stands for wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. Now, this goes back all the way to that very first temptation in the garden.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you special knowledge. This is very Kabbalistic, very Gnostic.
Yes, it is Gnostic.
And I can't help but think about Christ's admonition to John in Revelation 3 when he's having John write down this letter to the church at Philadelphia. And he says, let me just find it here really quickly. I lost my place. But he says to them that he knows, here it says, behold, I will make, first he says, I know thy works. Behold, I've set before thee an open door, and no man can shut it. For thou hast a little strength, and hast kept my word, and hast not denied my name. Behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, who say that they are Jews, and are not, but do lie. Behold, I'll make them to come and worship before your feet, and to know that I have loved you.
And in the early chapters of Revelation, we're told this not once but twice.
Yeah, and this is the opposite of what they told you.
Yeah. And Jesus told us in John 5:43 that I am come in my Father's name, and you receive me not. He was speaking to the Jews. And if another shall come in his own name, him you will receive. So I think that's interesting advance information. We know that whoever it is, that they'll come in their own name. We know that for a fact.
Well, and this is really interesting. And this, again, is just coming at the whole prophetic picture in the timeline that's laying open before us from a completely different perspective. As Christians, we tend to take a very, I don't want to say a narrow view, but we tend to focus on our own scriptures and not really pay attention to the teachings of the groups outside of mainstream Christianity or outside of evangelical Christianity when analyzing the prophecy. For example, what the Kabbalistic Jews are teaching, what the Buddhists are teaching, what the Hindus are teaching, what the Muslims are teaching, and considering that as a spiritual war, that there are forces that are laying this information out in front of various groups of people around the world, and drawing connections and conclusions and seeing what the relationship is between these various bodies of prophetic literature.
They're all telling the same story, but it's all with their own individual twist.
Right. Sure. It is so significant
Yeah.
comprised of 10 men who are non-Jews, which includes, was it Vendel Jones, the guy who's the inspiration for the character of Indiana Jones in the movies, who, by the way, was supposed to come up with the Ark of the Covenant last August.
Yeah,
They claim they're about ready to unveil the Ark.
yeah, they were supposed to, unveil it last year.
Well, either has it
They're
or
waiting for
saving it for a
maybe for
special
Gen
day.
6.
Well, somebody's put the brakes on it.
I need to ask you a question. Something that I think many of our listeners may be a little fuzzy on. There are a lot of web pages, a lot of organizations that talk about the Zionists this and that, and that the Zionists are in charge and the Zionists are trying to run the world. And all too often, Zionists are confused with Hebrew people, the people of God,
Yes, right.
the Jewish people. Could you please explain that difference for us?
Well, it's a subtle and fine difference. The protocols of the learned elders of Zion purports to expose a Jewish conspiracy. Now, I think that's nonsense, but when you read the protocols, it's obvious that this is the agenda that's being pursued, and so you know that somebody's doing this. And I hate to see labeled Zionist, but then on the other hand, you have to confront the reality of the fact that the government in Israel is not a very nice entity. So what do you do with this? I don't know.
It wasn't a nice entity at the time of King Ahab and a lot of the other kings.
No, they weren't.
I mean, they don't have a really good history for a very, noble government.
But the Zionist thing really, really blends off into the whole Masonic thing too, and we know that there is an extremely important archetype in Freemasonry, and it's probably the most important of all of their archetypes, and that's the raising to life of Hiram Abiff, gravely injured by the ruffians. And this raising of the widow's son is central to the Masonic myth, and this certainly jives with the Bible in as much as the Antichrist will be raised to life from a severe head wound. And we should recall that both Elijah and Jesus raised to life sons of widows. And further, the Bible in Zechariah 11:17 tells us, "Woe to the idle shepherd that leaveth the flock. The sword shall be upon his arm, and upon his right eye, and his arm shall be clean dried up, and his right eye shall be utterly darkened." This ties in with the dust jacket on the recently published Secrets of the Code by Dan Brown. And on the dust jacket, you can read the little portion that's written there, and it's on his website about that topic, Dan Brown's website. Quote, "But once you find these slightly bolded letters and string them together, they clearly spell out an intriguing question. Is there no help for the widow's son?" So clearly, the world is anticipating this event, and I refer to it as the fulfillment of the Judeo-Masonic imperative, and it's something that has to happen. The Bible says it will, and it will.
It's really interesting. Again, last night we were just madly searching the internet for things, and when I was learning about this Rabbi Schneerson, shortly before he died, he had a stroke. And so one side of his body did wither.
How interesting. How interesting. And also interesting that one of the fellows who's a leader, well, the prophecy of the Islamic Mahdi, don't they prophesy that he will be blind in one eye?
One-eyed, exactly.
Yeah.
Which is why you have that one-eyed...
Sheikh Omar.
Yeah, exactly. And I think very often the leaders tend to be one-eyed, which of course harkens back to Horus.
Horus, yes, absolutely.
Horus, who was the son of a widow.
That's right. This leads all the way back to Babylon, and that's where we're going to go as we continue our discussion with David Duncan as we continue talking prophecy and the 2012 scam next time on PID Radio.
Dave Duncan's website is thenewworldorderscam.com, and once you get there, you'll find a link to his page, The Year 2012 Scam. And it is sort of a 2012...
2012